to be reading a Greek myth that has a rape scene in it, as myths do around the world, that's actually a good thing. Whereas if students are calling, if they're saying, we need trigger warnings on Greek myths because some women have been sexually assaulted, I understand the impetus, but it's got the psychology exactly backwards. The cure for PTSD is not to protect people from triggers, it's to expose them to it.
Today we're reasoning with Jonathan Haidt. He's an author and professor of social psychology who studies how emotion shapes our morality. In 2015, he started observing a new phenomenon on college campuses. Students were increasingly seeking protection from ideas and speakers they didn't like. That same year, he created the Heterodox Academy, a collective of nonpartisan educators who are concerned about what's happening in higher learning today.
I've just received a call from Secretary Clinton.
Then came the 2016 election. Haidt watched polarization spread from universities to just about every aspect of American life. That shift moved him to write The Coddling of the American Mind. I read his book and wanted to hear more, so I spoke with Jonathan at the annual Heterodox Academy conference in New York City. Jonathan, I am so excited to be here chatting with you at the Heterodox Academy conference. What kind of resistance are the people here at this conference meeting on their college campuses?
So there's a lot of attention in the news media to shout downs and protests, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, if a visiting speaker comes to campus and says controversial things, some students will protest and they might try to even shout him down. But that's only happened, 100 times, 200 times in the whole country. There's not that many shout downs. The real thing that is affecting us is the self-censorship because of the social costs. This is what happens in a society when certain ideas attain the status of orthodoxy. People who question them will be shamed, shunned, and excluded. And so what happens is, if we're talking about anything controversial in class, people are afraid that if they question the dominant idea about gender or gender differences or immigration or minimum wage, even anything, someone will say not, oh, you're wrong, but oh, you're a bad person, or that's racist or sexist or homophobic. And so the students are more afraid of each other than they are of the professors. And if everyone's scared to challenge, why bother coming to university? The credit goes to my co-author, Greg Lukianoff. He's the president of the Foundation for Individual Rights in Education. He is the one who first diagnosed what was happening. And so Greg came to me and said, what's going on? How are colleges teaching students to do catastrophizing, black and white thinking, overgeneralizing?
There are people today who feel that the issue that you're banging the drum about is overblown. They feel like there is no free speech issue on college campuses. What would you say to those people?
Greg and I sometimes made it sound as though it was all campuses. We didn't know. And a political science professor in Canada, Jeff Sachs, argued that no, it's not most students, it's not most campuses, and he was right. There are 4,700 schools in the United States. Most of them are non-selective. They're not very political. The students are there to get an education. They're not out protesting. So at most schools, this stuff is not happening. Now, what is happening everywhere is the mental health crisis, and we can come back to that. But the shout downs, the shaming, that's not at most schools. But it is at most of the elite schools. I've gone around the country, especially in the Northeast and the West Coast, at elite schools. If I describe call-out culture, and I ask for a show of hands, you get large numbers, often a majority, saying, yes, this is the culture here. So I think the way to respond is, it's not everywhere, it's not a national crisis, but it is a severe problem at many of our most important schools. Students routinely say they're afraid to speak up, and if you keep your eye on the self-censorship rather than the shout-downs, then I think it is a crisis.
Two really important things that I want to talk about, the concepts of safe spaces and trigger warnings. You actually say that these concepts are not grounded in psychological research.
Right.
Why?
Right. So safe spaces and trigger warnings make a lot of sense if you don't really know much about psychology. If you have the idea that students are fragile, that a lot have suffered trauma, which is certainly true, and if people have suffered trauma, we need to protect them from reminders of the trauma. That sounds right, but it's not. The basic logic of fear conditioning trauma is Pavlovian. And so if a person has PTSD, if a person has experienced trauma, you don't want to re-traumatize them, but the way you get over it is by being exposed to reminders that are not followed by a bad outcome. And so college is a great place to get over these fears. The worst thing we can do in college is to continue the massive overprotection. And that's what we're doing.
Let's dig into your book, The Coddling of the American Mind. You really diagnose this culture of safetyism on college campuses, starting with 3 untruths. What are they?
The first of the great untruths is what doesn't kill me makes me weaker. Human beings are anti-fragile. Kids need stress, they need challenges, they need conflicts, they need to be teased, excluded, not lots and lots of times, but sometimes, in order to learn how to deal with it. The second great untruth is always trust your feelings. If I say something, because this is my experience, that's a fact, you cannot challenge it. This is antithetical to teaching critical thinking. This is antithetical to the scientific method. And then the most dangerous of all is the third one. Life is a battle between good people and evil people. This is the basic logic of tribalism. If you want to build a diverse, multi-ethnic society, people have to learn to give each other the benefit of the doubt, not jump to the worst possible reading. Because if you do all that stuff, I guarantee you, you will have eternal conflict.
One thing that I think is challenging that I'm hearing from people of color is that when they feel that they have been oppressed for so long and they've had to endure so much, I think it's difficult to break out of that binary dichotomous thinking.
Right. No, I do understand that. And that is something, as every institution is becoming more diversified and is trying to be more welcoming, we certainly have to think through all those issues, and we have to welcome input from black students, gay students. So, for example, if frat brothers want to sing a song with the N-word in it, okay, yeah, that, you can claim the First Amendment right to free speech, but we still should be able to expel you from a university. We do have to think through all these issues, but we have to focus on intent. And this is a particular move that's made by some activists. They specifically say, we cover it in the book, it's not intent, it's impact. It doesn't matter what you meant. All that matters is how I felt. And if that's the case, then everyone has to walk on eggshells. Because we've all agreed, it doesn't matter what you meant. It doesn't matter if you're trying to be helpful. All that matters is that I was offended, and therefore you have committed an offense, and we have a bureaucratic procedure for punishing you. This is why many students are walking on eggshells.
Can you leave us with just a couple of tips that we can all incorporate into our everyday lives to make this a world that is more accepting of opposing views?
Certainly. The first is you have to somehow cultivate moral humility, which is hard to do. So you have to realize just how imperfect we all are. Simple things like start by acknowledging that the person on the other side is right about something. It can be a little tiny thing, but a little bit of acknowledgement and you've just changed that person's psychology. And now they say, oh, this isn't a war. You're actually open. And then the conversation goes so much better. That's one. Two is we've got to get a handle on social media, by which I mean, I think everybody should spend a lot less time on social media. Social media brings out the worst in us. It sucks us into petty squabbles, us versus them, wastes huge amounts of time. And again, it's just almost perfectly designed, like a virus, to go inside and activate this ancient tribal programming. Stay off social media as much as you can. Let's see, those would be my main pieces of advice.
And watch this interview.
And read The Coddling of the American Mind.
Hey, NBC News viewers, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down here and click on any of the videos over here to watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.